World leaders have arrived in Spain for the COP25 Climate Summit. Local government elections commence in Trinidad. And protests continue to rock Lebanon as the nation grapples with an economic crisis. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Bolo in Quito, and this is From the South. World leaders have gathered in Spain's capital, Madrid, to participate in the COP25 Climate Summit. Chile was initially scheduled to host the forum but pulled out after anti-government protests rocked the country as hundreds of thousands took to the streets of major cities. This convention, organized by the United Nations, is the most important multilateral event where nations try to agree on climate solutions. Speaking at the opening plenary session, the UN Secretary General warned that drastic climate change could pass the point of no return if adequate action is not taken.
By the end of the coming decade, we will be on one of two paths. One is the path of surrender, where we have sleepwalked past the point of no return, jeopardizing the health and safety of everyone on this planet. Do we really want to be remembered as the generation that buried its head in the sand, that fiddled while the planet burned? The other option is the path of hope, a path of resolve, of sustainable solutions, a path where more fossil fuels remain where they should be, in the ground, and where we are on the way to carbon neutrality by 2050.
The United States House Speaker Nancy Pelosi attended the opening of the COP25 conference in Madrid, pledging her country's commitment to the fight against global warming. Now, this contrasts with President Donald Trump's withdrawal from the Paris Agreement.
For future generations. This is a mission, this is a passion, this is a scientifically based approach to all of it. Excuse me. And we're here to say to all of you, on behalf of the House of Representatives and the Congress of the United States, we're still in it. We're still in it.
From the COP25 in Madrid, the Venezuelan Communications Minister Jorge Rodriguez tweeted about the urgency of tackling climate change. He said, "Time is up. Either humanity confronts the climate emergency or there will be no future. The capitalist system and its egotism," he wrote, "is the main threat to life on the planet." Meanwhile, Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza has tweeted images of a letter that President Nicolas Maduro sent to the heads of state participating in the UN conference. He highlighted that there can be no climate justice without social justice. And over 5,000 police officers have been deployed to control a group of activists and environmentalists who've assembled outside the COP25 meeting. Thousands from around the world have marched on the conference to demand that the UN countries take concrete measures to halt climate change. Our correspondent in Madrid, Eduardo Marin, has more on the COP25.
The United Nations 25th Conference on Climate Change began this morning in Spain's capital. It was presided over by the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez and the Secretary General of the United Nations Antonio Guterres. Both of them made an urgent call to act now against climate change and fight the consequences of this climate crisis, as they have called it. This summit will continue until December the 13th, as Madrid is taking over from Santiago in Chile as the host because of the protests in the Chilean capital. The Chilean president sent a video message where he also called for action against climate change. Chile remains the organizing country even though it's taking place in Madrid. Sánchez said the actions need to be swifter and stronger to follow up on the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which will come into effect in 2020 and aims to transform countries' economies away from dependence on fossil fuels. Guterres said there are grave consequences, especially for developing countries, if all countries continue to act in the same old way. 50 heads of state are in attendance and 200 countries are expected to participate, in all 25,000 people. After the opening speeches, there were other committees and commissions and working groups where, for example, Honduras presented a proposal to renegotiate its external debt and use those resources to fight climate change.
In parallel with the COP25, a summit of the peoples has begun in Santiago de Chile with 5 days of activities that will address the climate crisis and the social situation in the country. The People's Summit is taking place at the University of Santiago under the slogan, "Save the Earth, Change the System." The international event brings together activists from social and environmental movements to discuss alternatives to overcome the environmental, economic and social crisis in Latin America and the world. Participants will also present contributions to the constituent process of Chile. Moving now to Dominica, the campaigns are reaching a climax ahead of Friday's general elections. The ruling Dominica Labour Party has been holding several rallies this weekend. The government has said that free, fair and transparent elections are guaranteed on December 6th, as they always have been in Dominica. That is in spite of a campaign by the opposition United Workers' Party, backed by the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, to demand electoral reform ahead of the polls. Prime Minister Roosevelt Scarrett reminded Dominicans that his government had provided for the first time free education and transport to all children in the country, as well as improved health care.
Many of our grandparents and our families did not have access to health care in Dominica because they were owing user fees. When Roosevelt Scarrett became the Prime Minister, today what do we have? We have better health care in Dominica and free health care for our senior citizens and our children.
Telesur's Alejandro Kirk is in Dominica covering the elections. He has the latest from the capital, Rosso.
Yes. This coming Friday is election day in Dominica. The contest is between the ruling Labour Party and the opposition United Workers' Party, which in spite of its name is a right-wing party promoting a neoliberal agenda. What is new to this election, because there hasn't been much of a contest in the last 19 years of Labour Party ruling, is that this time there is a challenge by an NGO called the Concerned Citizens Movement, which is challenging the electoral laws, which is promoting a reform of this electoral law and anticipating fraud. Who else is involved? Guess who? Luis Almagro, the Secretary General of the Organization of American States. This is a replica of what we have been seeing in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, and now recently in Bolivia, where a coup was staged based on an electoral report by the OAS claiming fraud. Then this report was never finished, it was never substantiated, but it was the basis on which President Evo Morales was overthrown. That's why Prime Minister Roosevelt Scarrett has refused to allow OAS observers in this election.
That was our correspondent Alejandro Kirk in Dominica. Now in Trinidad and Tobago, citizens are slowly making their way to vote for their representative of choice as local government elections kick off. Polls opened at 6 a.m. and will close at 6 p.m. local time. Just over 1 million people are eligible to vote for 339 candidates. However, only 139 councillors will be appointed to serve in the 14 municipal corporations in Trinidad. There are 6 political parties participating, including the main opposition United National Congress and ruling People's National Movement. The sister isle is governed by a separate system under the Tobago House of Assembly and will not have elections at this time.
How was your experience this morning?
Everything went quite smoothly. Everybody seemed to know what they were doing. I think we took all about 5 minutes like a slow process.
Okay. So no obstacles, humps or anything?
None at all. Actually, my polling card actually had THA on it. It didn't seem to be a problem, but everything went pretty good.
Now, there have been reports of voting irregularities, and as such, the Election and Boundaries Commission is warning the public against committing voter fraud or any other crimes in the electoral process. This is what one candidate said he experienced.
I was approached by a presiding officer, and she gave me a little touch on my shoulder. And she said, Mr. Jutram, are you going to vote twice today? So I look at it as a joke in my mind. I said, twice? She said, yes, as a businessman, you are entitled to vote twice. I said, really? I said, well, how is that? This is news to me.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. The first International Communications Congress has begun in Venezuela under the slogan, Now the People's Talk. More than 1,500 delegates from dozens of countries are attending the event in Caracas. Until December 4th, participants will share experiences with the aim to advance in the construction of a common communication platform for Latin America and the Caribbean. Communication, culture, decolonization, and hegemony are the main topics. Bolivian President Evo Morales says he supports the proposal by the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to investigate the massacres committed by forces loyal to the de facto government. Morales also denounced that there is no rule of law in Bolivia under the stewardship of the self-proclaimed president, Jeanine Áñez. He adds that the relatives of those killed for opposing the coup demand justice. The IACHR said it will create an external committee to probe the murders executed by police after Morales' forced resignation. Military police have killed at least 9 people in the Brazilian city of Sao Paulo. Police opened fire at a concert in the Paraíso Police favela. They cornered the students in alleyways, beat them, and launched tear gas. Police violence is increasingly part of Brazil's policies under the administration of President Jair Bolsonaro. A local resident said that after the death of a sergeant in the favela early November, rumors began circulating among neighborhood traders that there would be a massacre. In Guatemala, 30 citizens face a criminal trial for illegal logging in a natural reserve. The prosecutor's office determined that environmental damage affects universal rights.
At a court in Playa Grande Ichcan, in Quiche, a criminal trial is taking place regarding the effect of environmental crimes on the whole of humanity.
The damage is done to all humanity because the damage is done against a shared right. It's us, all of us, that have been threatened by the illegal logging taking place here.
The case focuses on the illegal logging of native trees and the invasion into more than 28 hectares of the Cerro Cantil Nature Reserve, which also serves as a water reservoir.
Among the huge variety of trees that have been cut down are protected species which include the lagarto, hormigo and Santa Maria.
Those implicated are 30 citizens from the same town who ignored internal agreement in the plea from the community assembly to put an end to environmental damage.
The reserve belongs to the community and they ignore our pleas. That's why we had to take this case to the relevant authorities.
The indigenous community's legal representatives believe that this is a symbolic case because the law is being aided by the state justice system to stop environmental damage.
This is taking place within the indigenous social community, and that's important, as it's ascribing relevance often missed by the system at a national level.
Of the 30 that stand accused, 16 will be present at a public debate to confirm their guilt or innocence. The final resolution will set a precedent for environmental crimes in regional communities.
Shifting gears now, U.S. President Donald Trump said he will reintroduce tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Argentina and Brazil. Trump took to Twitter to say that Brazil and Argentina have been presiding over a massive devaluation of their currencies, and this is not good for U.S. farmers. He said that effective immediately, he will restore the tariffs on all steel and aluminum that is shipped into the U.S. from those countries. The Mexican president, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, has marked his first year in government with an address to the nation from the Zocalo Square on Sunday. Among other things, he talked about how his administration has changed the catastrophic security policies of the previous government.
The executive has made an important change regarding security. Between 2006 and 2018, the president tried to solve crime with military and police action without dealing with the root of the problem, and the result was catastrophic. That strategy left many people murdered, disappeared, and injured, a human rights crisis. Mexico is still dealing with the consequences of that mistake policy. Let us not forget. Let us not forget that on February 2, 2007, Felipe Calderón ordered the armed forces to engage in what he called a war against drug trafficking. This irresponsible decision led to a battle with the organized crime that tried to clean out drug traffickers, whatever the cost. The result was a massacre.
The mothers of Central American migrants who disappeared in Mexico have set off on a caravan to search for their loved ones. Our correspondent caught up with them as they arrived in Mexico City.
They set off from Mexico's southern border on November the 15th, relatives looking for missing migrants from Central America. Antonio Alonso received news of his daughter Juana, who left her home in Guatemala 6 years ago with the intention of reaching the United States. She was arrested by the authorities and accused of kidnapping.
She has been in jail for 6 years in Reynosa. She wanted to realize the American dream, and look where she is now, in jail.
Some have found no trace of their loved ones. Delcia Garcia has no idea where her 17-year-old son might be. He wanted to escape from poverty and violence in Honduras.
My son wasn't able to get into the U.S. due to lack of money. 15 people from a criminal gang arrived and took him away. They beat him and took him with them.
This 15th caravan, organized by the Mesoamerican Migrant Collective Movement, has helped more than 300 families reunite. Only on this occasion, 5 families have met up again.
The mothers of the migrants organize in their countries of origin and search for their children. But they also look for other people. Some of them carry photos and other clues.
They're asking the Mexican authorities to help them in their search.
We get little or no help from our government. Our real help comes from the social organizations that give us a hand.
According to the organizers of the caravan, there are between 30 and 70,000 migrants who have disappeared.
Coming up, has China retaliated for the U.S. meddling in its affairs? Stay with us to find out. Welcome back. The White House has said that U.S. President Donald Trump and his lawyers will not attend an impeachment hearing at the House of Representatives on Wednesday. In a letter addressed to the House Judiciary Committee, White House lawyer Pat Cipollone said Trump cannot be expected to participate fairly. He also accused the counsel of a total lack of due process and fundamental justice. Last week, committee chairman Gerald Nadler said Trump could either attend or stop complaining about the process. It is not yet clear if the president would participate in the second hearing, which does not have a set date. Trump is accused of pressuring his Ukrainian counterpart to investigate Hunter Biden, the son of Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
China has banned U.S. military ships from entering Hong Kong and sanctioned several U.S. NGOs. This after the U.S. Congress approved the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act supporting violent protesters in Hong Kong. China's foreign ministry said the country urges the U.S. to correct its mistake and stop meddling in Hong Kong affairs. The National Endowment for Democracy and Human Rights Watch was also sanctioned for what China says is encouraging protesters to take up radical and violent criminal actions. 2 children have been killed by unidentified gunmen in the United States while they played in the snow in Minneapolis. Neighbors had to be evacuated for safety as the police tried to make contact with the suspects. The incident occurred while concerns grow over shootings in the U.S. Earlier in the same day, 10 people were injured during a shooting in New Orleans.
This is a horrific scene. This is a horrific call. It's tough to put this into words. You have 2 children that are out playing in the snow and they're killed. There's no sense to that.
Protests continue in Lebanon as demonstrators keep up the pressure on the government to deal with the deepening economic crisis. The nationwide protests, which began in October over widespread corruption and mismanagement by government officials, has worsened Lebanon's economic and financial crises. The escalation of the protests has also sparked fears of external interference.
We've moved from the museum throughout Riyadh Al Sodeco Martyrs Square to say yes to the stirring-biting parliamentary conciliation and enough sailing. The economic situation and the financial collapse can no longer put up with the trading of accusations among officials. They, the ruling party, want al-Hariri. Hariri has conditions while everyone has abandoned the people. It's time to form a clique government that can meet the demands of people. We march through all those roads to send a message that they can no longer threaten us with the sectarian war. We want to live in dignity.
We are here at this protest to say that the civil war has ended in Lebanon, and the different sets warlords can no longer treat us this way to bring back this war. Secondly, we want to say to the political class, and it's time to start the binding parliamentary consultations in order to name a prime minister from outside the political class, including the former prime minister and the current prime minister, and to name a national character and for a national government from honest people in order to get the trust of the revolutionaries who started those revolutions.
Malta's Prime Minister Joseph Muscat says he will resign in the new year as a scandal intensifies over the murder of a journalist in 2017. Muscat said he would ask his party to start the process of electing a new leader on January 12th, after which he will step down as Prime Minister. His government has been criticized for the way it handled investigations into the murder of Daphne Caruana Galizia, who was investigating corruption among senior politicians.
In the coming period, we will initiate a process so that our country will have a new Prime Minister. A Prime Minister who will continue the work and the strong mandate of this government and continue to deliver the plan the Maltese population approved in June 2017. I will write to the President of the Labour Party so that the process for a new leader is set for January 12, 2020. On that day, I will resign as the leader of the Labour Party. In the days after, I will resign as Prime Minister.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on Starsa Channel 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media for Telesur English. I'm Doris Polo. Thank you so much for watching.